Okay, so just now, this just happened here where uh, David was outside, and everyone was outside except for William, which was Minky. Uh, oh, actually, no, Sammy was inside. So Sammy and William inside. David was outside. Abby and Minky. And I guess because I'm still upset with Minky here right now, in the sense that what Minky was doing was he was antagonizing David, and we were outside and nothing was happening. And I said, okay, let's go in because the mosquitoes were out there. Normally I would just not say anything and they would stay out. So before that whole time, we were out there, and somebody was walking down in the street there, and everybody was barking except for Minky. And so, usually after David does that, I give him a reset hug. Hi, David. And I haven't been able to lately because I hurt my back a week and a half ago, and it just still really hurts. I mean, I slipped on something. It's kind of my own fault, right? I knew it wasn't safe, but I still took the risk, and then I slipped. And then a few days later, I was reaching down to, pick up something, and my back instantly just went out, and it's been painful for about a week and a half. So I haven't been able to give David any reset hugs effectively either, because I've had to kind of balance my body on my upper legs, and in a certain way, so that I don't have a lot of stress on my spine. So that means I'm not able to give him a full reset hug because I can't bend over him. Hello, Sammy. Hi, Sam. Hello, Sammy. And so, Sammy. Hello, Sam. So for poor David, he was barking, and since I didn't give him a reset hug, and I was just kind of sitting there, just kind of resting, David just kind of went and sat down again, and he was quite sensitive. Not sat down, laid down on one of the chairs, and so when I went inside, I'm just trying to recreate it all, because right now it's just quite a very emotionally and psychologically difficult thing, and I'm having a lot of confusion, and this would happen with me with hi, Sammy. Hi, Sam. This would happen with me and Walter, where my face is so funny. Everything's red looking, of course, so my face looks horrible. But it was like with Walter too. Something would happen, and I would have hi, David, and I would have a lot of confusion on what would happen, because one, if David was, with Walter, when Walter would attack me, I would have to, behave in a certain way relative to his behavior. If he was biting me or attacking me because of his own traumas, then I have to behave in a certain way. So after that would happen, just very, 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 like, just amazingly scary times. I mean, there would let's over, even though there's a horrible color here, there would be times where Walter would stalk me, and his head came. I'm 5'11", so his head would come up to the right about here, just above my mid chest. His head, because he was 183 pounds. David here is 211, but he's 183 pounds and 38 inches at the withers, and a very long torso. So he's a standing height of over 6 feet 6 inches on hind legs. So when he would come after me, in the beginning especially, because he didn't know me, he just, I've written about how scary it is. But he would come after me in the sense that once he got to understand that the home was closed, he understood, right? Because he came from 7 different families in 19 months. And he's got 16 attacks, not bites, right? He dragged a shelter worker into his kennel to try to kill her. So he didn't attack her where she was standing, which is just basically an extremely dysfunctional dog, but he actually pulled her into his kennel to then attack her, which means that is a cogency, a level of intelligence to be able to calmly control oneself to decide what to do, despite the ferocity of what it looks like. Because he's 180, 150 plus pounds. He's dragging a woman who's 100 pounds. So that aspect happens where, you know, we have to understand that kind of behavior is done deliberately, which means it's being thought out. And despite the fact that it looks very sudden in the movement of dragging somebody right away and ferocious, of course, that level of processing cogently what is happening in the environment, is paying attention, like Bruce Lee can pay attention in a very, very intense scene of physical movement, right? Because he's able to process everything in his field of vision at almost an instinctual level. So this is what's happening for our dogs. They're just processing it at a very clean, rudimentary structure, very clear and very clean, without a lot of emotional sharpness that then divisively separates the ability for emotion and cognizance of what's happening as well, self-awareness to occur. And because he's Walter and like Nero able to drag the person somewhere on purpose, means that they're thinking clearly enough, and they're just basically being very pissed off, which again is like a guy who beats up everybody. If he was an animal, he would be killing people, he wouldn't be beating them up. So that's that aspect of behavior of humanity that we have to understand. So then Walter would he's the one who picked me up off my feet, and I'm almost 200 pounds. So when things would happen with him, I would have to deal with the emotional and psychological feeling, and I'm feeling fear. I'm so afraid, because it's exactly what you don't want to find in your own home, and you're trapped. There's no way anyone can help you. I'm living alone, right, with these dogs to help them. And the aspect on my end is I have to start learning how to survive these things. So it's a predaceous structure that happens, right? Because I'm a predation structure, because I'm deliberately getting to that mode of paying attention to what I'm doing to make sure he doesn't do that to me again. My tone, my structure, everything like that, right? Food can never ever help that. A shock collar doesn't help that, right? That dog is not going to let you ever meet anybody so pissed off you could keep hitting them and they won't let go of their target. So that's that same structure of comprehension. So then it comes to that point that having to pay attention to what's going on meant I had to learn as well. So I'm paying attention to all the things going, but then again, I have to control it's not fight or flight either. It is always flight, then fight. I will always run away. I will always defend myself before I attack, because why would I attack unless I needed something? So there has to be the point of that, and that's an introvertive structure, right? And I talk about that in my lives and yada yada. So what ends up happening then, excuse me. So then what ends up happening is the ability to learn came from having Walter there, and me trying to deal with these emotions, and it's always so confusing. And now I get more, you can tell as I'm talking now, I'm a bit more structural or more connected in how I'm talking now versus then, because I'm still coming off of, I don't know, I'm just turning it off of that. He's 211 pounds, and it's really, it's hard to tell, but you can see how big his feet are. Mr. David. That's the giant dog. Hello, David. So David would, hi, David. Walter, and that's when he was called Tonka before I changed his name to Walter. Because I wanted a name that would reflect my own psychological opinion of my dog. Because then that allows me to shape my conduct with him by naming him in a name that, right? We do that with children. We create an objectification and a hope to quantify what we psychologically hope for and wish for. I gotta get some water here. So yeah, no, Walter would like just he wouldn't corner me. There'd be times where like the place I was renting before had an island in the middle. It was a rancher style home, which was amazing because Nero was old, and I thought he was going to die in that home. He was already 10 years when he arrived, and he was 11 when we got to that home. Anyhow, in the kitchen there was an island. No, it's like a 1950s thing. So there's an island in the middle, kind of like nowadays, but obviously back then. So it was quite cool. And then you could go around it, and there's a lot of room because again, it was an old home built on some land, and so there would be times where Walter would be standing on the other side of the island, and he would just track me, and he wouldn't run after me because he realized, well, it didn't make sense because his body is so long, like as long as the island was, right? It's like a 5 foot, 4.5, 5 foot, four. No, yeah, it's a 4 foot wide island, and 4 feet by like 2 feet. So his body was longer than that, so he didn't really turn around. He would just stand directly in front of me, and then he would just weave his head one way or the other in that sense of it, and then he would turn, and he wouldn't chase me because he knew the home and the domestication, it was an enclosed physical structure. So then he would walk after me, right? It's where he was so angry is not what it is that he would walk after me. He was so self-aware of his environment and the ability to process where he was. Again, I talk about that predation aspect of behaviors, that charisma, that cogency, the ability to process the complex emotions, to control himself. So he would just walk at me because he knew I couldn't escape as well. So it wasn't predation, because predation means a deliberate attack, right? Not just to eat, but to kill. So then that comes to the point where if we are giving an idea of being able to say there's actually a difference between dangerous and predation, then we have a much more complete understanding of how behavior is more intricate. Sorry, I have to get some water. Hello, William. Okay, William. How that is intricacies, and it is a lot of little things that are happening. Yes, William. You're okay, William. Stop it. You're okay, William. What do you got, Mr. William? Hi, William. So William wants a reset hug. Like, oh man, my back is killing me. Hello, Mr. William. Hello, David. All right. Okay. Okay, William, go lay down, William. Okay, go, William. Here, there you go, William. Oh, good boy, William. Good burp. That's me, sorry. Hello, David. Good boy, William. Good burp. You're okay. So David, no, sorry, David. Walter William. Okay. Go, William. Go, William. Thank you, William. Oh, William. Hi, Sam. Hey, William, get up. Go, William. I see what happened. Oh, sorry, William. Is that Sammy was up on this, and I didn't realize that she had gotten off, and he was trying to get, because she was beside me while William was doing that too, and I was like, what? I didn't realize it, and so obviously William wanted to get on here, and now he's gonna breathe heavy. Okay, so yeah, getting back to Walter, he would just stalk me. He would follow me throughout the area. I mean, there'd be times where he was like literally 2 feet away from me, like where David is. You see the space here between me and David, right? It was even closer than that, and And with Walter, if I moved to one side, Walter would move to one side. If I moved half an inch, he would move half an inch. He would hold his breath to hear me breathing. It was phenomenal. And because he's, again, a very large, giant dog, I can see his physical behavior because I'm paying attention to it, the body language. So I learned to recognize, indications of psychosomatic behavior and deliberate behavior. So how the dog is standing. That's why I say paw position symmetry is extremely important in regards to recognizing whether or not our dog is feeling okay. If they're not standing normally or readjusting themselves when they're getting a reset hug, that means that they are not feeling okay. So there has to be a reason why. And if not, then to spend the time with the reset hug. And so I would be able to do that with Walter, but it took, it took me like almost like 6 months. And again, that's, or 7, maybe 8 months. And that's, obviously this is a dog who couldn't be touched. Who was attacked a child, bit them in the face, attacked a mom and her adult son, the shelter worker, that one, about trying to kill her, just a whole bunch of bad negative interactions. And so obviously 8 months is amazing and all that stuff, but it isn't. It's just basically addressing the dysfunctions at a highly simplistic level. So anyhow, long story short, with Walter, the fact remains that he would move in such a way that was very clear. It was either deliberate or there was some charisma behind that. And that means that there is a structure of consciousness that is as complex as human behavior, because the ability to cohabitate and as a cross species. Hello, Mr. David. You're okay, David. Right, to be able to cohabitate with another species, especially to cohabitate with a predator species, because we are much bigger than dogs, right? Because standing up, I'm taller than David or Walter would ever hope to grow, right? They're never going to get any bigger, so they're going to see and recognize as an adult dog that they're going to see me standing up over them, and I'm physically bigger, so they're going to expect that I'm able to protect them, that I have more, not power, but more ability to protect everyone as a parent in a familial structure. Because if they feel that they're safe, that their bodyguard can handle it, then they'll let the parent take care of it, because they know the parent will protect them. So that's a aspect of understanding the familial structure, and understanding the ability to cross species cohabitation, and to have an emotional relationship of such complexity where there's a reciprocation. So that level of consciousness, where it is, it's not one of those kind of silly, like, oh, well, fantastical, oh, yeah, dogs love each other and I love them. No, I'm not talking in that manner. I'm talking about the actual process structure of this, of how it is broken down relative to how dogs have, in regards to the abstraction of their consciousness from their biological there's not saying that they're, put myself in my dog's paws, ha ha ha, that kind of context, but more so in processing how dogs not pro well is for you to start thinking more realistically on how the process of what your dog is thinking or doing is indeed a reflection of the soul, right, of consciousness. There's a reflection of a soul of consciousness. So, hello, Mr. David. So anyhow, with David just now, because I wasn't giving him hugs, I'm sorry, I'm so dry mouthed, and I just want to kind of explain things, right? That's what I mean is we can't just think linear or even lineal. We have to think contextual and idiomatic, right? There has to be an aggregative conflation for comparative historical compare to apply, right? I always use these same words. I want to make sure people understand what it means in all these contexts. I mean, in all these videos, because there's the context. Hi, David. Are so overwhelming, right? The definition is beyond the crass limitation of innate, of being innate. Nothing is innate, unless you get down, and I mean in regards to functional aspect, right, of life itself. But for David, he was upset being outside. He's just licking his leg. He was upset for being outside, right at the person there barking at them, and then I came inside, and then he came in, and he came up here, and I should have got up right away, but my back was hurting me, and so I came up over to him, and then Minky was over here, and he is over there, and before, yeah, and I vacuumed this yesterday, and I vacuumed it. I have to vacuum it literally every day. I only do it at night. Then in the morning, it's nice and clean looking. And they don't lay out here in the morning or day because it's too hot. It's too warm here. Or I mean, sorry, it's not warm, but it's stuffy in here. So they go either outside or into the room with the bedroom with a fan. But yeah, so David was upset, and he didn't, and he and I should have done the reset there, and it's just me being lazy, and that's where, again, that's my fault. I have to take respect of that, for David's sake, right? Because I can't just go, well, and then go well and get upset at him because of what I did. So what happened here? So funny. Right, this is a regular couch, so. So for David, it was the point where when I finally got up and I went to give him a reset hug because Minky was right to his in front of him, right? Like if you were to say right here, Minky was to that part, and so of course David felt, because Minky is really quite. Minky and David have fought, and of course, David's been bitten, and Minky has been inside of David's mouth. David has actually picked up Minky, and half his body has disappeared. And you can see his jaw is kind of small, but also his flaps. So you see the flaps on the outside of Minky's body, and you only seeing his head and his bum, literally. So, and Minky's 55 pounds. So anyhow, I went to give David a hug, a reset hug. Hello, David. And then Minky was there, and I should have cleared Minky off, and I didn't make any recognition because my back is hurting. And I was trying to stand in a reasonable way to give him a hug, and as I started to do that, he did kind of growl, and I didn't mention, but I continued to reach down a bit, and I said, David, you're okay, and then let go, right, slowly let go of him, and continue to say, David, you're okay, and that is because for me, for anyone, it's extremely risky, right? And again, he's been here long enough, right? It's like, and so there's that familiarity and the trust, right? The intimacy of affection. When you're, right? If you're really pissed off at your partner, your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, right? If you're really pissed off at them, the last thing you want them to do is to give you a hug. So that's a level of trust, right? And that is a different context of That is a different context of emotional structure that is somewhat at that level of predation, right? That complexity of dealing with an emotion that is so hard processing, so is processing in such hardness because it's happening right there. The intensity is happening because we all have two core emotive structures, which is rage or joy, and rage and joy, right? Because there's that the last. It's not well because all the emotions are in between. I've talked about it in other videos and live streams on Facebook. So so the growling and the thing too is with a dog David's size, like physically wide, body wise wide, his chest is wider, or sorry, deeper than my own chest is wide. So I could feel the growl before I could hear it. So it's really quite scary. And when you feel it, when you're already afraid that he's going to do that because he started to growl already. Hello, David. You're okay, silly boy. When he started to growl, I could feel it, and then I continued, and then he growled louder and hard, right? So the vibrations are much more harder and more pronounced as well. And so, because of the familiarity and the trust, right? The familial structure, because he knows I'm not going to harm him, so he's like, okay, but you're really irritating me, and his complexity of emotions are basically that your partner who you're angry at is giving you a hug while you're still really, really pissed off at them. So we have to look at that context and the complexity. It's actually easier to do this with David, for example, than it would be to do it with a girlfriend or wife that was really angry at me, right? Because they're going to say, why would you give me a hug? You just pissed me off. I don't want a hug from you. I want to get this resolved first. And, 4.5 hours later, yada, yada. So, haha. But we have to understand, hello, Mr. David. So I have to understand for David, and we as a species must understand that for David to even be able to have this level of trust and that emotional complexity, especially at that level, because as a species he's going to go, well, I'm just going to stay with my own. Not that I'm just a dog. It isn't that, but just I'm going to do my own thing. Hello, Mr. David. Hello, David. So after giving David, I let go of him and I slowly stood up and walked away. And then I kind of stood there. He got up onto the couch where he was there, and I was standing there, and he was still very quite livid, and he in his how he was psychosomatically expressing himself with his blink behavior, right? How his eyes were blinking, so forth. And that blinking, we see that in human beings, we see that in animals. That process, right? Not the dynamic of full motion of movement to all the corners and aspects of our eyes of all angles, because of course that requires a level of much more sophisticated consciousness to which humans have and the other species don't, other than maybe gorillas or so forth, to some slight pattern, right? When we watched, when you right, if you watch the videos, you can see there's some slight pattern to that level of complexity of consciousness, and that is also being developed through the cogency not evolution, yeah, evolving that dog's cogency, right? The ability to think about things and all that, and because the more emotionally you not controlled, but more emotionally cognizant you are of yourself, the more you understand. You learn from your experiences. So that again goes back to that part. And I've done live streams again, blah blah blah. So you can all put these things together. Is understanding that there is the ability for a dog to think about how they feel and to control themselves, to self-actualize, to self-soothe. But the context has to happen where those emotions that they would normally default to the core emotive of rage, now they have an opportunity to process it in a safe environment instead of feeling like as if they have to run away because of the emotions or defend themselves because they don't feel like they're emotionally able to feel protected. And we see this in human behavior, and we see this in quantifiable examples in other species, especially familial species. So by giving that ability to think of what we're doing means that, or for our dogs to think of what they're doing, is to be able to understand. You're okay, David. There's an airplane flying overhead. Right, no, somebody's looking over there. Right. So it's giving that that ability for David to understand that, you know. Sorry, I totally got sidetracked by everything, but it gave. What I mean is giving that David that ability to think of the things that emotions are so complex, right? So he's sitting up on the thing, and Minky is there, and he is growling, and the way he is, right, blinking and so forth like that, his eye behavior, everything like that is happening, and he's starting to growl again, right? So I'm standing there very, very, very much attempting to stand casually. But of course, I'm also having to think of, well, if he does this, what am I going to do? So I always have to think of an exit plan. You see this happening, right? Where you pre-plan, well, if this happens, I'll do that, right? Contingencies, etc. So this is what I always do, especially with Walter, or Nero as well, is I always had to think of, if I did this, what would happen if Walter attacked me? Where would I go? What would I do? What could I grab? Everything. So I'm always paying attention to my environment. Because of that could happen. And even times when I carry things, what happens if I tripped and I fell, because I'm like, maybe I'm trying to walk past Walter for the first time, and those times are so scary, like unbelievably scary. And I'm saying to Walter, like, Walter, you're okay, as I'm stepping over there completely freaked out when my foot is literally right beside him as I'm stepping past him on purpose, in my own mind, not to train him, but to teach him that I'm just not. Who cares, right? And again, it's a familial structure as well, but it is giving him It's not familiarizing him. Like, it's such superficial, materialist way of defining things. But it is more the point of giving Walter and dogs the ability. Okay, you can see a foot this close. It's not going to kick you, for one thing, right? Again, that part of it, it's just normal for this to happen. And it also teaches him as well that I'm attached to the feet, so I'm walking by, so the whole body, so that's where the more range of being worried about being attacked comes from on my end. And for Walter, then it teaches him it's okay. But anyhow, with I just never talk about Walter in the beginning, because there's just so much, and I never think of it as too remarkable, and then I realize it actually yeah. But with David, he's growling a bit and all that stuff, so I eventually just kind of grab the phone and start recording this whole thing like this and just talking him through. So that's why he doesn't feel abandoned either, right? Because there's that other aspect because we look at the parental structure, and he's dealing with these emotions that he would normally have been satiated by my protection of him or giving him a reset hug like outside. So then that aspect is not a dynamic either. It's just a circumstance that occurred, right? So it's that aggregative conflation that we must apply. So for David, then it goes to the point of, okay, we are going to basically give David the ability to safely process being pissed off, right? We're giving him the ability to process predation. I don't know, predatory. That level of charisma, so to speak, to come out, to be able to control himself and just kind of talk himself down. And convey that to everyone else here as well, physically, that he was not going to attack, so to speak. All right, I better let everyone go. Bye-bye.